Hey guys, I'm so excited to come on and let you know that I have created a free journal template for you. Badasses build boundaries. Boundaries have been essential to me in my healing journey, and I know they can do the same for you. It's when we say no to the things that don't serve us that we're really able to be true to who we authentically are and who we are looking to become. So go into the show notes or go to my website, jessieblois.com, to find the link and download your copy today.
Today, I have Dr. Liana Sved here with us. I'm really grateful that you're coming on the podcast. You've created something really unique and different, and I know we're going to get into that. So, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Jessie.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Before we get into what you're currently doing and what life looks like now, can you give us a little bit of background about who you are?
Yeah, I I live in Connecticut, right? I live in Connecticut with my husband and two dogs. And we moved here about 6 years ago. And I absolutely love New England living. It surprised me because when we originally moved here, I requested to go further south on the East Coast.
Where are you
And
from?
I'm actually from Ohio, and I moved out to the East Coast with PT school, and I just fell in love with it. So that's where I'm from, like Booneyville, Ohio. Well, not really Booneyville. There's a name to it, but really, like my backyard was a cattle farm.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's cool. One day, I think a farm would be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to go back to having like at least some chickens or goats.
Yeah.
Not that my family ever had those, but I would love that. So to give you a little, I guess, perspective of where I've come from a very small town of like 3,000 people. I did a big move for PT school in like 2010 out to Baltimore.
Okay.
And loved city living, moved out to Connecticut, and I love it out here. We live in like a little beach town. So if you guys have ever watched one of Julia Roberts' very first movies, I want to say it's the first one, but maybe not. I might be mistaken. But Mystic Pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I live in Mystic, Connecticut.
Is there Mystic Pizza?
There is a Mystic Pizza. But a fun fact about the movie is it wasn't filmed in Mystic. It was filmed in Stonington.
Okay. Okay. That's cool. So, did you meet your husband in school?
We didn't. We met on Match.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was he in Baltimore?
He was in Baltimore. So he was in Baltimore for his orthodontic residency, and I had already graduated physical therapy school. His field was predominantly like it's either women or married men, essentially. And so for me, it's like the same. I was a bunch of women in physical therapy, and
yeah,
that's where we met. Match.
That's great. So, okay, first of all, how did it go? We're going to back up for a minute from living in this small, tiny town to now you're in this big program and you're living in a city. Was it culture shock or you were prepared, you'd been to cities?
I mean, I'd been to cities, like I'd been to New York for, a trip, or, I had been to school in Cleveland, but I hadn't gone to, my school wasn't in downtown Cleveland. It was like on the suburbs of Cleveland.
Uh-huh.
But I was living downtown Baltimore, like next to Shock Trauma Center, and so every time there was an ambulance that went by, that was what I heard. That woke me up at night for the first couple months until I got kind of used to it.
And then it was white noise.
Yeah, then it was white noise. But the real shock, honestly, was finances. I think that was really like, I was just always brought up being very financially aware. And so when I signed a lease for like $900, and that was just like my half of the lease in Baltimore, I was like, oh my gosh. I was paying like just $200 for like everything in Cleveland.
That's a huge difference.
A huge difference. So I think the biggest thing was really just finances. It was like a shocker to me, like how expensive things were on the East Coast.
Yeah. Wow. I'm in California, so typical. I feel like I'd be shocked if things cost less, but shocked in a nice way. Okay, so you guys are in Baltimore, and then why did you decide New England?
Yeah, so we really wanted to stay in Baltimore, Annapolis is where we really wanted to be, but my husband was having trouble finding jobs, place where he could essentially have his entire income in one job versus, breaking it up into multiple different jobs. And there was at that point in time, no potentials for like buy-in into practice because so he expanded to search elsewhere. We had talked about places we might want to live. He just stumbled across Connecticut. Like Connecticut was not one of those like top on the list, but I knew we would move here as soon as I heard him talk about, when he went to go shadow and speak with the doc that's now his partner. Yeah. I was like, this is where we're going. Like, and he tried to like still go to other places. Like, let's look here, look there. I'm like, I really think Connecticut's the answer. I think that's where you're going to be the happiest. You could just tell in his voice and how he was. And he's been there for 6 years now almost. So
that's great. So were you already working and you had to leave a job?
Yeah, I was working. I actually had changed several jobs at that point. Like while we were together, I probably changed jobs 3 times actually.
Why did you change jobs?
Yeah, multiple reasons. I mean, I started off in acute care, which for those listening, that's the hospital system. And at least for me, it just kind of got very dull.
Okay.
Monotonous work. And not very rewarding because your patients never come back and you don't really want them to come back because right. So I left, changed that job and I went to work at National Rehab Hospital in Washington, D.C. So the commute one was absolutely horrible, right? But going from Annapolis into the city and then back was like a 2-hour commute one way.
Oh, that is horrible.
Yeah, it was. And on top of that, the job wasn't the job that I thought like it would be. There were a lot of things I think women can relate to this, like things that were promised to me, things that were discussed and then later weren't part of the package. And I was like, well, this isn't the contract I signed.
Yeah.
So, I remember walking into my boss's office and saying like, look, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. And I remember him telling me that, I at least had to stay in the job for a year. Otherwise I'd be burning bridges. And I was like, look, you didn't hold up your end of the bargain. I'm done.
So what did they say to that though? What was to the part that they weren't doing what you have been promised?
They didn't really have a response. And that to me was enough to leave the job. There wasn't a response. It was almost.
And this was a big company?
A big company. Yeah. I mean, it was under new management. It was a new manager. I mean, I will give him that. I don't know if he had managed something. I think he kind of walked into some things that weren't great. But yeah, I was like, and it was the first time I had really stood up for myself, like in jobs, I guess, in that.
How did that feel?
It felt hard, honestly.
Yeah.
I felt like maybe I had made a mistake the way that he had talked to me, burning bridges.
Threatened you?
And, but I just kind of stuck with my guns because I knew I couldn't do the 2-hour commute anymore. One way. I just couldn't.
I mean, that's gnarly.
Yeah.
That's gnarly. You knew you always wanted to work with adults?
I did actually dabble with some pediatric contract work when I first graduated school. And that was, I loved the relationships that came out of that because, I'm still friends with those families, but just not for me.
Yeah.
In terms of like everyday work.
Yeah. Okay. So you are leaving your job. You're going to Connecticut with your husband. How long had you guys been married at this point?
Oh, less than a year. Yeah. We went maybe married like 6 months, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you know anybody in Connecticut?
No. Well, no one in the immediate area that we're moving to. I do have family in the eastern part of the state.
But no one that you're like, come over for dinner.
Yeah, but not come over for dinner. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
how was that on your relationship?
Oh, I mean, there was just so much that was going on in our relationship at that time. You know, we had gotten married. I had changed jobs actually twice. We just talked about one of them, but we changed jobs twice. We had to sell the house because that was my house. Made a continental move. He had a very important family member in his life pass away, all within the matter of 6 months.
So you guys are really like, if we can do this.
Yeah. Oh, and we had to put down our dog. So that was like another so there was just so much that was going on.
That's a lot to fit into 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, in order to process everything that was happening that first year, we were getting a little distant, essentially. And that's very opposite of what people want to do their first year, right? You want to be together, you want to be happy. So it was, and then on top of that, I was dealing with some health issues myself. So that was another, I don't know, thing to kind of put in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it was a rough couple of years, coming to Connecticut. Yeah.
Adjusting.
Yeah.
What kind of setting did you end up going into when you got there?
Yeah, I went into what we call a mom and pop shop or mom and pop.
I own a mom and pop shop.
Yeah. So
I get those.
Yeah. So privately owned, wonderful boss, wonderful staff. I felt very welcomed. It was very helpful to have that job having come off of such a rough 6 to 8 months, essentially.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so what year is it at that point?
It is probably beginning of 2018, probably.
Okay. And then were you there when the pandemic hit?
Yeah, I was at that job when the pandemic hit. Yep.
What was the response? Did everything shut down?
No, she stayed open. She stayed open through the entirety there was never a shutdown for us. She very much thought of us as her children, her family. And she knew that a lot of the girls, most of us were girls, lived paycheck to paycheck or needed to make money in order to send their kids to daycare or whatnot. So she stayed open and decided to take, whatever funds she needed from the government to support us. So we stayed open the entire time.
Okay, great. So why don't we cut to now the type of business that you own? And then if you could kind of explain the thought processes you had as you transitioned out of working for somebody else and into this model that you've created.
Yeah. So I left that job in 2020. I had an intermittent job to kind of respect a non-compete clause in my initial contract that I had here. So I opened my business in October of 2021 on a whim. I had 2 weeks notice to open my business. And that was really rough. I mean, of course, I think you're just flooded with emotions. One is that, okay, this is my only option, right? And almost
why was it your only option?
Yeah, just because of what was happening in the healthcare systems and some of the mandates that were happening, I chose not to participate for my own healthcare reasons. So I had to,
all those mandates that no longer exist.
Exactly. So in order to protect my health, when I needed to leave my job, and so.
Okay, so you left your job. Spoiler alert, she creates a business that's virtual. We'll talk about it. But had this been a thought process or you came up with it in 2 weeks?
I mean, it had been the tiniest little thing in the back of my head. It had always been to my husband, what if I just opened my own business that was all just jaw related? And it was all always on the back burner because either financially we weren't able to kind of handle a 3 month to 6 month conversion of me losing a salary.
Yeah.
Right. So, when the mandates were coming out, we had kind of talked about it. Do you think it'd be okay? And we were just kind of hoping it would kind of pan out, and then it didn't. So we just kind of put it together and was was
he working?
Yeah, I mean, so he was working, yeah. So I mean,
Okay.
yeah, he was working through the entire thing as well.
Okay.
Um, but it was just like one of those things where we're like, okay, I had some money that I had saved up over the years from treating people kind of cash based on the side. And I had put that away just in case ever needed to start my own business. I think that's like kind of what I get from my mom, like just always kind of storing a little bit of cash set aside.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, and so 2 weeks found a place to rent, found a put up my website, and
Did you make your own website?
I did make my own website.
Okay. Well, I know what goes into starting a business. So the idea of like figuring this out, doing this in 2 weeks, launching, I mean, you have to find patience.
Yeah.
Did you feel like the universe was kind of giving you these obstacles to point you in this direction? Or did you feel like, holy shit, what's happening?
Oh, I 100% believe the stars were aligned. I'm a
Okay.
very like I wouldn't say like a very astrology. Like I'm very astrological being, I think, like deep down. And I definitely think because it was as much as it feels like these were hurdles, they
Yeah.
were hurdles. They were like pretty seamless. Like things just kind of got dropped mm, into my lap, essentially, somebody to help me with my LLC, I somewhere to be, just pop up my clinic and, you know, um, joining like a business networking group locally to kind of help bring in referrals. So really the only real issues I had were mindset issues, not necessarily the physical issues, right? So a lot of like, can I do this?
Uh-huh.
Am I being true to myself? The financial issues that always kind of pop up in my back of my head because
Well,
my family
yeah, I was
financial.
going to ask you about that because you made a comment at the beginning about, um, the culture shock and being raised to be financially minded. So I was like, I wonder if that's a huge limiting belief in your mind of like, this is not a responsible decision, or what if it doesn't work? What am I doing? And kind of combating those limiting beliefs. Because I will say, when the universe, and we, at the start of the pandemic, I never thought my husband and I would join forces and work together, but the universe, 1,000% just made things that I never thought would happen, where it was kind of like we had to. And for us, it was actually some really unfortunate events that I thought were pretty catastrophic at the time, led us to that. But looking back, I can't imagine if that didn't happen. We never would have joined forces by choice, but it was meant to be. It changed everything in a really positive way. So I really do feel we were led to do that. But I totally hear you on the mindset and getting in your own way with limiting beliefs. So what are your techniques, or how do you handle those thoughts?
The
Or
self-limiting beliefs.
yeah, what do you do to combat them, or do you just push through them, or do you still have them?
Yeah, I still have them. A lot of it has come from therapy, realizing that a lot of my self-limiting beliefs come from things that were instilled within me from childhood.
Hmm.
Either beliefs that my parents had, beliefs from like other people. Realizing that part of that's a little bit of people pleasing,
Yep.
right? To kind of keep the harmony.
Yep.
Um, and then as well as I actually started, it's called like a worry journal or a worry
Okay.
book, where I write down my self-limiting belief and I literally close the book, done. Or I write it down on a piece of paper and I burn it, or to write it on a piece of paper, flush it down the toilet.
Yeah.
Right. So it's more or less to just get it out of my mind and destroy it somewhere, like put it away.
Did
Right.
you create that, or did someone give you that technique?
No, I had started doing it when I first started my business. I was just so worried I wasn't going to succeed. So I just started writing down, I called it my worry book. I just started writing down my worries. And then that way I could go back the next month and be like, that was stupid. Why did I spend so much time worrying about that?
Story of my life. And it's so easy as a mom to be like, guys, worry is just the story you created that's probably never going to happen, whatever. But to self-implement gotten a lot better. But yes, it's,
Yeah.
and you're 100% correct. All these limiting beliefs that we deal with as adults, they stem from childhood. Not that our parents or anyone around us did anything intentionally. It's just the experience we had to the situation. So someone else could have been in that same situation, had a completely different outcome from it. And I really agree with the people pleasing. So for me, it was like people pleasing or self-shaming that are still the issues that really, really creep up. And I think especially as a business owner, because it gets better and easier and you kind of learn, but it's never seamless. It's always something.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of writing it and burning it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so you run a space, you open it, and you decide to really hone in on the jaw.
Yeah.
Why?
So it was just like, it was one of those things where I kind of felt like stars were just aligning and that's where I needed to go. I personally have had jaw issues for the majority of my life. Not that I'm in a lot of pain or anything like that, but it's just always been something that's kind of on my back of my mind. And, is it just going to get worse? And, I thought in PT school, I would learn more about it and didn't. And then I started to learn more about it in continuing education courses. Then I ended up meeting my husband, who's an orthodontist.
I was going to say, did that have anything to do with it?
So it had a lot to do with it because, I was like, I can help you. Like I can help your clients who are coming in, your patients that are coming in with jaw pain, like I can help them. And that one of the biggest barriers was them seeing me in an insurance-based, for multiple reasons, like an insurance-based practice, mainly because I just didn't have the time. There's not enough time to see that specific of a client when there's just all this overload of like other clients. It's hard for them to get on my schedule. So, yeah, I think between, my personal, his personal, right. So he has a very different story than I do. It just really just kind of, that's where I wanted to go. And at first he gave me a little bit of pushback. Like, I think he just was worried. He was like, I think you should take some insurances. I think you should do full body. I don't think you should niche down. And
did he think it would be too hard to find the clients that needed that specific work?
Yeah. And I think he also thought it would be hard for me to find clients who would pay me cash based versus go through insurance. And so that's another example where I kind of let somebody influence my decisions initially. And so for 3 months, I did that. For 3 months, I didn't take insurance, but I at least accepted all body parts. And after 3 months, I said, no, I need to niche down. It just didn't feel right to me.
Okay, yeah. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about what was happening internally.
Internally, it just felt like conflict. It was not joyous to me. Like I didn't want to, treat low backs. I didn't want to treat somebody's knee. It just didn't bring me joy. And at that point, I was really on a mission. Like, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to have my own practice, I want it to bring me joy. Right? And so I was like, no, I would take referrals, but I stopped taking, like, if somebody called me out of the blue, I'd be like, no. But if it was like a referral from like a chiropractor or something, I'd still take the client. Now I've stopped all of that. Like, I don't take any clients I'm too full to take. There you go. I'm too full to take any clients who aren't jaw pain related clients. So
it's such a good story and lesson. It's so hard to jump off the cliff.
Yeah.
And to say no, because that's scary. So scary. I'm really, really into boundaries. Because I do believe that if you are letting in a lot of what you don't want, there's just no room for what you do want. So saying no is so badass that you did that, because that transition period, that's scary. I remember doing that when I was working full time in the schools and just starting my practice treating on my own. My husband and I originally had to sit down and be like, am I really going to quit my full time job and like try to grow a practice? And at that point, I was like, if I can, I talked to other women who had private practices for a long time and they were like a single provider and they had 30 clients. And I remember sitting in my car in front of my grandparents' house one day talking to this woman. I think I had 8 clients at the time. And I thought, oh my God, if I can get 30 clients, I'll done it. Like that's what I want to do. And now the clinic treats over 300 families a week. But it wasn't even an idea. It just kind of happened. But I had to quit that safety net job in order to give myself the option.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you come to your husband and you're just like, I'm going to do it my way. Like, I just really, have you always trusted your instincts?
I've not always trusted them, but my instincts have always been right.
Yes. Because
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah.
Yes, your
Yes.
gut knows. It really, when it feels heavy and yucky, and I like how you described it as conflict, we just know, you guys. You have to trust it. When you meet somebody and that energy is just like amazing, like you found someone that you really connect with. And when you meet somebody and that energy is off, like that probably just not your person. Like we just know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. So you tell him, how many jaw patients did you have at this point? Enough to sustain you? Or you were like, I really need to get the word out there?
No, I did not have enough clients to sustain me. I wasn't even making any money at this point. It was
Okay.
3 months in, wasn't making any money. Um,
I imagine marketing, well, you're in at the end of 2021 because I'm thinking of like where we are in the pandemic and how you can get the word out and
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it was, so essentially what I did is I buckled down. I got together some new marketing materials and I went to every dental office. And mind you, I didn't name drop my husband. I did it on my own. I said, here I am, like, this is what I do. And it came up cold turkey. Like I didn't get a whole lot of referrals from there. But I don't really know where the catalyst was, but somewhere in February or March of 2022, the 1 day a week that I was renting, right? I was doing this on 1 day a week, guys. It wasn't like I had my own
you were
office.
doing this on 1 day a week?
Yeah. So I was renting from a friend for 1 day a week. It was like one and then 1.5 if I needed overflow, where I would pop up my table, I would set everything up. And
Oh, because at this point it's in person. Okay, okay.
yeah. And anyway, so 1 day a week and I was full. I was literally working from 7 to 8. And I was like, I can't do this on 1 day. Like again, conflict, not making me happy. Right.
And you're limiting yourself. You can't take more clients if you don't have space to take more clients.
Exactly. So and I was never a morning person, guys, like ever, never a morning person. Well, I shouldn't say that. I would always wake up early, but I didn't want to be around people until like 9 a.m.
Oh, I
So
so understand that.
why am I waking up at 7, staying super late? Anyway, so what I did is I didn't have places to really accept more clients or shift them if they canceled. So I had been bugging the landlord in this building for, you're going to love this story, but bugging him for at least 3 months. Like, hey, has anything popped up? Has anything popped up? Because I knew I wanted to be in this building. It's like an old mill. It's very rustic, like exposed brick. And he said yes. He's like, actually, somebody just told me that they're not renewing their lease. It will be available to you April 1st.
You manifested that.
And I had actually, in one of my goals, like my moon goals, I don't know if you do moon goals, but in like
no, but I want to hear about what a moon goal is because I'm into it.
So like if you like full moon, it's what you want more of in your life, but
Okay.
new moon, what you want that's new, like things that you don't have. So
Okay.
in new moon goals, I had always written down in 6 months have my own place, in 6 months have my own place, in 6 months have
Because
my own.
the new moon is every 6 months.
No, it's every month, but just like I
Oh,
would
a
put,
full moon. Okay.
yeah. So it would be like by 6 months of owning a business, I wanted to have my own place. And I had a vision of what I wanted this office to look like, right? And I knew I wanted it in this building. I wanted it these bright, large windows with exposed brick. And I just wanted it to have a lot of plants. And he showed, okay, let me show you the office. And the office is 4 large windows, exposed brick, like a corner office with a waiting room. And I was like, and again, fear, right? And that's what I've learned. I've learned that fear is like your chance to lean in. It's not your chance to step away. If you're fearful, more than likely you're on the right track. And I remember being to my husband, I'm like, but it's 800, again, money, right?
Yeah.
$150 a month. And I'm like not making any money. And he like not making enough essentially that in my eyes.
Yeah.
And this is where it was like kind of a shift for him too. He was like, Liana, you have to get this. This is the place that you want. And he's like, you need to grow. And he's like, I will work extra lectures or whatever to pay for you to have your office. And I was like, okay. And I even had to have the out, like, okay, in 6 months, I could break the lease in 6 months if things didn't work out. And let me tell you, I stepped into that fear, and the rest is history. The rest is I now run a very successful business, and have my own place.
You completely manifested that space, especially you had the vision, you had specifics about it. And here's the thing, guys, we can't take on something that we can already manage, right? Because if we can already manage it full-heartedly, then there's no room for growth. I remember moving into the current clinic space that we have and looking around and thinking, because it was a doctor's office before, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to fill this. What am I doing? What am I doing? And since then, we've had to take on additional units in the building to expand. We can't grow though if we don't, I don't want to say take a risk, because I really do feel like if your gut is telling you do this, you have to just sometimes lean in and trust it. But if there's no fear, then you're not challenging yourself and allowing yourself more.
Agreed.
It's just part of it though. And it's a scary part of it. It's a necessary part of it though. Having my husband join my business was scary. We were 2 people working W-2 jobs with separate incomes, supporting our family. And now we're going to go all in together on a business. And it's the start of a pandemic and we don't know what's going to happen to it. That was put me into a big state of depression, to be honest, at that point. But I don't know, sometimes you have to do the hard thing, and we can do the hard thing. Yeah. Okay. I love it. So now you have this business, you've manifested your beautiful space, and you're all jaw.
All jaw.
Was he a referral source for you? I would imagine he's a good referral source for you.
Yes, he is. So, I do jaw pain. I also do myofunctional therapy. So he's a good source. And it's really become like, we're more like kind of what you and your husband are. We're a team, like I'm part of his treatment team, essentially. He's starting
that's great.
Recognize like how there's a bigger picture to than just jaw pain, or, to kids with, gag reflexes, or, their herpes appliances aren't staying on. You know what I mean? Like there's a bigger picture. And that we're now part of like that trusted referral circle. Him, me, quite a few other dentists and periodontists and oral surgeons.
So are you in the same company, or you still have your own separate? Okay. Yeah, you have your own separate.
It's like one of the reasons why I kept my maiden name. I was like, just in case you ever wanted to refer me clients, I don't want it to be weird as to like, here, go to my wife.
Okay. So your last name's your maiden name.
Yeah. My last name is my maiden name.
So they don't know you're married.
Most of the time, no. Sometimes I will, like, you kind of read the client, or I tell them later on, Dr. Mike's my husband. And then they're like, oh my gosh, no, don't
Ah.
like your husband. I was like, yeah, I know. I'm like, I'm the one, he's the nice one. It's all good.
Did he understand jaw and oral muscles to the extent? I mean, I know he's an orthodontist, but they don't all understand our world as myofunctional therapists. So, did you have to kind of bring him into that world, or is it something that he had gone down that rabbit hole too?
No, I had to bring him into that world a bit. I mean, at first I don't think he was as like kind of accepting. It was almost like, yeah, I know what you're talking. Like I know it. I know what to do. Um, but he very much so, like he's not one of those orthodontists that's like, oh, you're coming in for jaw pain, I can definitely fix that. He's like, these are the things that with your bite may be affecting it, but and we can definitely address those things, but there's other parts to it too, um he's been really finding that the myofunctional therapy is really interesting, and he has a lot of questions about it, and we talk about it, come home and it's like talking about oral care in our house all the time. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, and I mean he himself, he was an airway patient when he was 20. So I mean he is very aware of that, and he's
So, for
very
anyone listening, tell them what an airway patient means.
got it. So an airway patient is somebody who has sleep disordered breathing. So that can be anywhere from mouth breathing, snoring, to upper airway resistance syndrome, and then also sleep apnea.
There are so
Um,
many people right now going, "Oh, my spouse is an airway patient."
yeah, right? So he was an airway patient himself. He was diagnosed with very severe sleep apnea when he was 20. So
Wow.
yeah, he had surgery to bring both of his upper and lower jaws forward to make room for his airway.
You and I need to talk. We can do this after the episode, but my husband does have severe sleep apnea and we are starting the process. He's going to get MMA surgery.
Oh, awesome. My
So,
husband does
I
not regret it. Yeah.
yours what?
My husband does not regret it.
Oh, yeah. I there's a lot of conflict. I'll talk to you after. I have a lot of questions as his wife and kind of the information we've been given. Um, the overall consensus is correct, but I think a lot of people find this in healthcare as well. Every doctor has a slightly different opinion. And then as the patient, especially with the knowledge I have, I get really confused because I'm like, wait, I've learned this and you're telling me this, and then this one's telling this, and you're telling me that's not a good plan of care. And someone at his age, that's not effective. And then, guys, it's so much money. And my husband's not going to be able to chew for, at least 6 weeks. And then he's a huge part of the business. It's just so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It is.
I will actually, if that's okay, I really want to pick your brain about it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because it's a big one. So yeah, so that's cool. So your husband, though, as an orthodontist, it's really nice that he's walked the path.
Yeah, he has walked the path. So when I do see somebody for jaw pain and I'm recognizing the airway symptoms, having him and his partner as well, as a referral, it's like, yes, let's get the ball rolling. Because unfortunately, I think is that we aren't able to get clients or patients more testing. We're really at the knowledge of, or basically the referrals from other practitioners.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a running theme anytime I have a guest on this episode in the healthcare world that healthcare is broken, guys. It's really, really sadly broken.
Yeah.
I can say that as a provider and as someone who relies on healthcare, it's not going great.
No. And it's honestly a huge reason why this niche really spoke to me, because no matter whether you talk about airway or whether you talk about jaw pain, it's a subset of people, a subset of patients that are very ignored in our medical system. And as somebody who had been ignored in their own health issues, that was just something that I could not stand for, really.
Yeah. Well, I think that's beautiful because jaw pain can be pretty debilitating. I was in a car accident a handful of years ago and the way it impacted me. And this is when I was working in a school as a speech therapist. I couldn't talk for more like an hour at a time without being in tremendous pain. So it really can take you out of your daily life.
Yeah.
And as a wife of someone who has severe sleep apnea, guys, he takes the CPAP off. Poor Ben. He has no privacy with all the clinicians in our clinic. I'm like, look at his palate, you guys. Like, poor man. But he takes the CPAP off in the middle of the night because it bothers him. So let's just be simple and say biggest disruptor is he is such a loud snorer. But knowing what I know about myofunctional therapy and airway, he stops breathing in his sleep. You hear him cough to start breathing again. So then I made him get do a sleep test. I thought he'd have like, maybe it was severe sleep apnea. He at that point was like 37. And sleep apnea can take a really big chunk of years off your life. So it's a big deal. So to have that, so many people think snoring is normal, you guys, or we were just at a family event and they're like, oh, it just runs in the family. Like everyone just needs a CPAP. It's fine. And this is what people believe. This is what people are told. I'm like, no, it's not fine. And it's not normal. His mom said to me, it's not my fault. I'm like, well, yeah, if he had orthodontic work as a kid, I think this could have been a lot better. So it kind of is, but okay, we won't go there.
Oh,
but that's what I tell the kids I work with. Like, so great you're doing this now. Even my daughter, when she was 6, I started getting her expanded because she was snoring, bedwetting, she had night terrors, to name a few of her symptoms. And now that she's expanded, she doesn't have any of it.
Yeah.
So when I talk about expansion, I guess this is turning into like a airway matters. It expands the palate and it opens up your nasal airway and you can breathe better when you're sleeping, your mouth can close and yada, yada, yada. That's not what this podcast is really about, but it is so important.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and you sleep better, and you feel rested.
Your partner
okay.
will sleep better and feel rested.
What?
And your partner will sleep better and feel rested.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I wake up with anxiety when the CPAP's off.
Yeah.
Cause like I want him around.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I kind of like the guy.
I hope so.
I want him to stay. I want him. So yeah, so we're doing the MMA thing, but it's a big deal. It's not a quick little surgery. And you guys, he has to do so much orthodontic work before and after. He's going to look not fantastic. It's pretty gnarly orthodontic work. Everything gets separated and there's gaps and there's holes and he has a journey ahead of him.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to kind of go back into like my husband's old Facebook photos, like before he had his surgery and just see like how much his face changed.
Yeah, I know. That part is going to be pretty cool to see.
Yeah. I learned about his journey really early on when I was like, oh, I really hope our kids like have your nose and like your jaw structure. And he's like, yeah, this isn't my real nose or my real jaw structure.
So did he do myofunctional therapy back then?
No, and he needs to do it, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So he just found that on his own, the MMA surgery and everything, because that was pre-you.
Yeah, I mean, that was like his mom's a nurse, and so his mom did a lot of advocating for him, but essentially he was given, you can wear CPAP for the rest of your life, or you could have surgery. And he was like, I'm going to have surgery. He's like, I'm 20 years old. Like, I don't want to wear a CPAP for the rest of my life. Like, that's 70 years of wearing a CPAP. And so
I don't blame him.
He got the surgery.
And he feels good.
Yeah, I mean, he's much better. I think if he did some myofunctional therapy, I think he would feel even more better. More better is not really the right, but
he would feel better. Yeah. I know what you mean.
But he's not. He hasn't done it yet. So he's like, he's very evidence-based. He's a type 1 Enneagram. Like so he's waiting to kind of see the results from clients, and then he'll be like, okay, maybe I'll try it.
Or he sees the exercises and knows it's going to be hard and he's going to have to put in the work.
One of the two.
Yeah, no, it's worth it. It's not that hard, guys. You can do it. Okay, so bring me to current date. You're in Connecticut. You have this thriving business. Now you just treat virtually.
I still treat in person.
Oh, you do? Okay. Do you treat
So
outside of Connecticut or is your license only in Connecticut?
the license is only in Connecticut. So my virtual business is still helping people through their jaw pain. It's still coaching people through jaw pain. But in terms of actually doing physical therapy, it's only for people in Connecticut.
Oh, virtually you can treat outside of Connecticut though?
No,
Oh.
no. In general, like physical therapy, it's only in Connecticut.
Oh, got it.
In terms of like coaching them through, things like what we're just talking about, helping them, with like, okay, how do I, navigate this healthcare system? What's really going on with me? Because I've gotten a gazillion opinions and I don't know where to start, where to be, that kind of stuff.
How do people find you?
Instagram. That's how all my virtual and digital clients have found me, is Instagram.
Talk to me about building your Instagram. Did it just kind of organically happen or did you very intentionally set that out to build your virtual clientele?
It organically happened, I would say, initially. And then I started getting a lot of people asking me for help. And I was like, oh, I had never really thought of this as being an avenue to do. I was actually very against doing any sort of virtual work. I'm like, how can I help people virtually without laying my hands on them? And I started I would probably say it was probably May or June of this past year, so 2022, that I started my virtual business. And I did like a beta group from my Instagram, and it was very amazing to me, like how much they improve, with education, with guidance, with a plan of action. Much better that way.
So you started your Instagram page just to kind of throw knowledge out there.
Oh, I started it and actually I just rebranded my Instagram page because I started it maybe it was like 2020. I started it way before I even opened my business. I started it as just a way to bring more education to the jaw space and to educate other providers, really, because a lot of providers don't know much about the jaw. We get like a 2-hour lecture in PT school. So, and then it just kind of blew up. I got people who weren't providers and the people who had a lot of questions, and it just kind of took off from there. So I actually just rebranded it because I originally started it off as to be anything from like the chest up, right? And people just kind of, again, don't fight it, guys, because that was another example of I wanted to be broad and I really needed to niche down. And I was fearful to do so because who needs to learn more about the jaw? But there's over 5,000 people who want to learn more about the jaw. So, it's just, so I finally niched down the handle of my Instagram.
Your entire story is just I don't want to say it's organic because you definitely have to take action steps, right? Like you have to face your fear and take the action steps. But your original passion and vision really did manifest to life over a handful of years in a really beautiful way. Even just the Instagram, not intending to build this clientele that's niched, but doing just that. It's awesome. I think these are the stories people need to hear to know that if your gut and your heart are telling you you're meant to be doing something, listen.
Your gut, your heart, and then just if you're fearful, walk into it.
I love that. That kind of like makes me go,
I know, right?
But it's true. It's true. We can do the tricky, hard things and make it work. And I think that you're right. If it's fearful, it's because it excites you and you want it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you
for coming on.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this podcast. So thank you so much for hosting me.
Thank you. I think it's good. It's a really awesome trajectory and story. So thanks so much. All right. We'll talk soon because I have questions.
Okay. Have a great
You too. Bye.